Hello, you're watching Chatting with Janine. I'm your host, State Representative Janine Nodder. My guest this week is also a state representative. He's Jim Crichton, and I just found out recently that he's also Colonel Crichton of the U.S. Army. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you. I
can call you
it.
Now I feel like I need to call you Colonel.
I'm retired.
Representative Colonel. Okay.
So I'm just Jim Crichton. Thank you.
So I was told by one of our colleagues that you wrote a book. Mm-hmm. So and I have a copy of it, Coalition Leadership.
Yes, ma'am.
And the most awesome thing about this book is it's free.
It is. Yes. Marine Corps University Press.
So if we'll give the link and we'll talk about it some more later in the show. But tell me about your book and what it's about.
Yeah, sure. So I spent my last 2 years in the Army in Afghanistan. I was able to write the plan for the departure of the Dutch nation from Uruzgan, and that was while I was stationed in Kabul. I was literally 5 days from retirement, and my boss came up and asked me if I wanted to stick around for another year and execute the plan that I had just written. And I said, well, I will, but I need to check it out first. So I flew down from Kabul down to Uruzgan, which is about a 2-hour flight. I checked it out, and I thought this is something that I should do. I said I had to talk to my real boss, so I called home.
Boss, your wife?
My wife.
Okay. Yeah.
So she's a retired lieutenant colonel. I called her up, and I said, hey, what do you think if I stay another year? And she said, basically, well, you have two options. Either you can stay and do something that you have always wanted to do, command a brigade in combat, or you can come home and I have to live with you for the rest of my life knowing that you didn't stay. And she says, I'm just not willing to do that. And so what happened was that I took command on the 1st of August in 2010 of a 9-nation, 3,000-person organization which was responsible for the security, growth, and development of Uruzgan and Daikundi, 2 small provinces in southern Afghanistan. And the book, the purpose of it is to capture the lessons that we learned, hoping that we can make the world a safer place by training the people that are going into those situations, the new generation coming up, and helping relay some of our lessons that we learned. And so that's the purpose of the book, and it's based upon the lessons that we learned, some of the successes and the failures, and trying to identify how people could be more effective in leadership.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned brigade. So can you just tell me, go through the list? So that there's a squadron, there's a platoon, and then brigade.
Yeah, it's a great question. You basically start out at the platoon level, about 30 guys. And then you go to the company level, which is about 100 folks. And then the battalion, which is normally 300 to 500. And the brigade is anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000 or 6,000 based upon who you have assigned to you and how it's...
And what's a squadron, or is that not?
So a squadron is equivalent to a battalion, but it's in the Air Force.
Okay.
or a cavalry squadron. Mm-hmm. So for example, my first 6 months there, I had 2 1 cav. So 1st Squadron, 2nd Cav was attached to me. And they were cavalry soldiers out of Germany, U.S. soldiers out of Germany. So
one of our colleagues, Representative Bob Healy, also of Merrimack, told me that you were the commanding officer of Don Bolduc, but he couldn't have been a general at the time.
Yeah, Don Bolduc, good friend. He was commanding the Special Forces organizations. I had 2 Special Forces battalions, each of about 150 people, in my footprint. So they were stationed with me. I worked very closely with them. I made sure that everything that they did was aligned with my goals and objectives and my vision, but they actually belonged to Don. And so Don and I coordinated closely to make sure that the missions and tasks that these organizations had, which were both within my area and also out of my area, that they were well coordinated and contributed to a common vision.
So Don Bolduc's been on my show a few times. Mm-hmm. The first time he was on, we talked most of the show about General Patton.
Yeah.
So, because I've been to the Patton Museum in California in the desert there. I took my son. We went early in the morning, and it was very, very hot, even early in the morning. And I bought a book there about his family, and it was, I tell you, it's one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah.
What a fascinating family.
Absolutely.
You know, his father, grandfather, and they were buried. And there's just something I remember from the book as when they were digging the hole in the grave to add the father, I guess, and the grandfather was in there, and the casket was broke, so he could see him there, and he had been embalmed.
Wow.
So he still looked like he was just sleeping.
Wow.
Yeah. But his children didn't go in the military, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And my father was in World War II as well, and of course he was older when I was born, and he was one of the soldiers that liberated Dachau.
Oh, wow.
It haunted him the rest of his
experience.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, we were stationed in Germany for 7 years, and so visited Dachau, visited Bergen-Belsen, and just recently we were in Poland and went to Auschwitz. Very powerful reminders of, how we as a nation have to continue to fight to preserve the freedoms that we've earned.
One of my sons went to Dachau, and he said it was life-changing.
I bet.
And
I bet.
There's an Auschwitz exhibit that's, I think it's in Boston, maybe.
Oh.
It's coming up this spring.
Yeah.
So I think I want to go. I know that they had some pieces at the Patton Museum, and just seeing them, like seeing the Nazi flag.
Yeah.
You can just feel it. You can feel the energy from that. It's hard to describe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, how long were you in the Army?
I joined in
Switching
1978, and I graduated from the academy in '82, and then I retired in 2012. So 30 years of active duty.
Wow. So you had mentioned 2010. That was when I first won my seat in the House of Representatives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Just the timeline. And how long did it take you to write the book?
It took me 2 years to write it and 2 years to publish it.
Oh, wow.
And
you don't get any money for this?
No, I don't. No.
Wow.
I get to talk to people like you, and hopefully more people, and that's what I really want to get out of the book, is to be able to relay some of the lessons that we learned about how do you bring diverse people together, different cultures, different languages, different training, different values. How do you bring all those folks together and then get them to move along a common vision and execute a mission that they buy into? So it's not a mission of, Australian mission versus a Singaporean mission versus a U.S. mission. No, it's a combined team Erzgon mission
How
that
do you
we
go
all
from
perform together.
Being a colonel, that's like way up there, to being a freshman rep. I mean, I remember one of our first conversations, we were talking about dogs, and you told me about a dog that was a mutt it looked like a giraffe with a big long neck.
Exactly. Yeah. A Basset Hound and Great Dane combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strange.
At the end of the day, if you treat people with respect and dignity, if you listen to what they're saying and then hear what they're saying, if you are passionate about what you do and you exude that confidence and the positive attitude, then you can fit into most anywhere.
What committee are you on?
Right now I'm in Environment and Agriculture.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'm the
Judy
vice
Aaron.
chairman.
That's right.
And it's a great committee. About 70% of what we do is on consent.
Oh,
and so
that's good.
it's a committee where if we see a bill that doesn't make sense or is half-baked or is not ready to go, then typically what we'll do is we'll figure out how to make it work. And so most of what we do is on consent, and everyone agrees with the course of action that we're going to take, whether we're going to push that bill forward or whether we're going to recommend to kill the bill.
Wow, so I'm switching gears back to the Army now because I want to see the pictures that you brought.
Oh yeah, please. So this patch was designed by my sister-in-law, Anne Mary Wood, who is an amazing graphic artist. The interesting part about it is that the patch, the lion represents the courage of the Afghan people. The green represents the green zones, and so Afghanistan has the tan or the dashed is what they call it, desert mountains, and then these lush green zones in between where they can grow anything at any time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then the blue above is just it's just a beautiful country with huge blue skies over the green growing areas, and then the dashed. And so that's the patch. That's how it was designed.
Wow.
And combined team is important because recognizing that 9 different contributing nations, each with an equally important part to play, but all those parts had to be put together like a puzzle to make sure that, for example, the Singaporeans had about 350 that did a wide variety of tasks that were vital to what we did, but they could never leave the compound. And so how do you integrate them in with their specific national caveats?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This picture is fun for me. You talk about...
Is that a lei?
It's those are flowers.
Oh, okay.
And they're fake flowers. They're silk flowers given to me by the children of the school. The children had to cross this bridge every day.
What's it
to
made
get
out
to
of?
school.
Is that a pontoon bridge?
No, that's about 30 feet above the Helmand River. And if you notice in there, it's made out of sticks. And there's many gaps of 6 inches or a foot.
And no handrail.
There are handrails, but if you look on the one on the right there, it's about...
A rope. Okay.
It's a cable that's about a foot shorter than the other cable. And so you're running across this thing cattywampus. And they literally lose several kids a year going across that bridge going to school.
Oh, wow.
But we'll see a picture in a minute. That school was built by I think it was built by UNAMA. And
What's UNAMA? What is
United Nations Assistance Mission, Afghanistan. And it, Stone School, the kids in there are amazing. They were learning third order.
There they are.
No, this is a different school. The kids in that school were learning third order algebraic equations. Like just algebra like a normal 7th or 8th grader would do. It was amazing.
I think I saw girls in the picture with the kids.
Yeah, we'll see
girls
some
too?
in a minute. Go ahead to the next slide, please.
Oh.
Well, so this gentleman came to me after we cleared the Mirabad Valley, which was a Taliban-infested area when I got there, and when I left, it was a free road that connected the district. This gentleman came up to me with tears in his eyes, and he basically said, "Thank you." His son was on the back of a motorcycle, or his grandson was on the back of a motorcycle. He said, "This is the first time that I've ever been able to take my grandchild to see his family in Dehrawood," which I thought was an amazing thing.
It wasn't safe to go before.
It wasn't safe to go before. And so literally a very poignant time for me, just saying we're doing the right thing. These are the kids the kid in the white there is the one that's doing third order algebraic equations.
Wow.
And I sat down with him, I said, in my fluent Dari, which I needed a interpreter, but I said, "What are you doing?" And he picked up his book, and I thought I was in 8th grade again.
Wow.
And it was pretty spectacular.
And in the background, I saw some...
There were a bunch of girls in there.
Yeah.
That was a co-ed school. This school ran 2 shifts. It was in the province of Daikundi, which was primarily the Hazara tribe. The Hazara tribe was sort of the lower tribe in the hierarchy of tribes. And when the Soviets came in, they took to the hills and built an amazing society based on education. And so the sister school to this one was running 2 to 3 shifts a day of schools packed out. And when we flew in, all you could see, it looked like Little House on the Prairie. All these kids going to school with their books, and they were walking literally miles to school every day.
I remember in the 80s, because I was a teenager then, and reading about the Soviet Union. They came in and they built all those roads in Afghanistan, and then they invaded them.
Right.
And the Afghanis had never lost a war.
Yeah. And they're very resilient people. So this is sort of the way you get things done. You've got the chief of police there. You've got the chief of the army. You sit around a circle around a carpet, and that carpet is full of food, and you just hash things out. You talk about things.
And who are you sitting next to there?
That's the chief of police, and the guy next to him is the chief of the army, and they're just, you just sit there and you talk to the council of elders, essentially, and they identify what the problems are, and then you do the best you can to fix them.
Wow.
A lot of what I talk about in the book is building relationships, and you can only do that by going and talking to people. So every day I was in numerous different locations, talking to soldiers, talking to locals, talking to kids, trying to understand what their issues were and how we could help the Afghan government. So the important thing was that although we had many of the resources and the impetus, the idea was that the Afghan government had to own it. And 2010, 2011, in Uruzgan and Daikundi, I thought we were doing pretty well. It didn't stick. But part of the leadership aspect of it is being able to meet people on their own ground and being able to listen to them and understand what are their issues. And part of that is confirmation. So at a higher level, you get tons of reports where they say, well, there's 166 schools, or the flow of supplies is flowing easily. But then you go down and look at it, and it's different. And so understanding what is truth on the ground can only be determined by going there and looking and talking to people that are actually doing it. And so that's what I'm doing here.
That's a good picture.
Yeah, that picture was taken on one of my movements throughout the district and throughout the province, going to talk to different people. We did have substantial conflict when I got there, but as time went on, we felt much more comfortable going out into the province and just talking to people without the overwhelming combat presence. So you notice I don't have a helmet on in that picture, which is a substantial difference than the way it was when I first got there.
Well,
you make great friends. In fact, Hemi Brown's on my podcast. He was on the 6th episode, which I published last week. He's a sergeant major, regimental sergeant major from New Zealand.
How do we hear your podcasts?
It's on Spotify.
Spotify, okay.
So the title is Just Get It Done.
Just Get It Done.
And it's on Spotify. You just push search, Just Get It Done, and it'll come right up. And what it does is talks to the people referenced in the book. And it gets a deeper perspective. So we talk to Singaporeans, talk to Australians.
So how long has the book been out? I learned about it from Representative Deb Hobson. She told me about it. She said, did you know Representative Crichton wrote a book? I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, it's been about 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, so it's new.
So it's fresh off the press, and Dartmouth's picked it up. So the business school at Dartmouth is using it for part of their classrooms, and I've talked to the Australian Army, who looks like they might pick it up, and so a lot of folks, a lot of interest in it so far.
Yeah, so you sent me a link, but you gave me this one, but I think I ordered one, and then there was 2 other books that looked like they were available that looked interesting I wanted to read.
The Marine Corps University Press has an amazing library of books that they've published, and mine is the latest. Wow. And so when you go to that link,
that's really cool. I actually know quite a few authors, and we seem to have several in the house. Several authors in the house. If you go down to the bookstore at the State House, well, the visitor center rather, there's books on the shelf from past and present reps.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Oh, who's this lady? You mentioned her earlier.
So that's Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Part of the challenge in this operation was that you had to deal with senior level leaders from each one of the countries, and the most senior one was when Prime Minister Gillard came, and she was amazing. When she came,
She looks a little, because I have bad eyes, like Reba McEntire. But
She does,
I
a
kind
little
of
bit.
thought she looked like.
Yeah, she's really well prepared. She asked insightful questions. We took her to places where she didn't expect to go, but she was really a pleasure to host. Her biggest thing, though, was it was basically the Super Bowl of Australia. Aussie Rules football was on that day. And so as we were planning the trip, she says, I don't care what we do, but I want to watch the Aussie Rules football championship with my guys.
All right. I guess she got to then, right?
And she did.
Yeah.
Yes, she did. And she gave me a rugby ball and signed it, which I still have.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it was a great visit. But the point of this slide is that when you have countries come work for you, it's definitely at the pleasure of their government. And so you have to respect their government's decisions and their government's objectives and policies. And so working closely with each one of the governments was important to making sure that the organization stuck together and was able to continue to move forward.
So what's the next slide we have? Oh, that's the one that came up for a moment earlier.
So the first slides I showed you were from Daikundi. This is in the western part of Urzgan, which was more Pashtun.
And it's boys and girls, it looks like.
No, this is just boys in here.
Okay.
The previous one was
Yeah,
boys and
nice.
girls. This is just boys. This school had been built but not occupied. So one of the things that we did is we were teaching them geography, and their idea of geography was anything outside of their town was foreign to them. It was like a little postage stamp, and that was all they knew. Maybe 10 miles in any direction was all they knew. And so we had a map out there, and we were trying to explain these things to them.
That's a big world.
But the challenge was that the elders in this town really did not want them to go to school.
Oh, that's sad.
The Afghan government had not produced enough books because under the Taliban, they didn't have books. They didn't have school. The education rate in Urzgan was 3% overall, 8% for boys, and 0.3% for girls could read and write. And so think about that. 3% of the kids could read and write. And so our idea was that you build these schools. But what I didn't understand going in was the pushback that we would get from basically the elders didn't want the kids to go to school. They wanted them working the poppy fields because that's where the cash was coming from. And so in some areas, like the previous picture, third order algebraic equations. In other areas, we had work to do. Teachers were tough. If you pay an interpreter $600 a month, and you pay a teacher $100 a month, where are your educated teachers going to work as interpreters? And so that was one example of how our pricing structure caused more problems than we anticipated.
Oh, wow.
And
So we'll have like 4 minutes left.
Okay.
Are there more? Yeah.
this gentleman, Muhammad John, an example, he was the religious leader in the province. His son was killed, and I went to talk to him by the Taliban. And he said, that sacrifice is worth it because we're going to defeat the Taliban. And so he was an amazing man.
Yeah. Is there more slides? Oh, that was the last slide. I'm running out of time. I wanted to ask you obviously you know Mike Moffett.
Yeah.
He's a state representative, but he's
Yeah.
also a colonel, but he's a Marine. Do you
Yeah.
guys ever sit and talk?
We do.
Yeah. I had him
Yeah.
on the show once a long time ago. He's going to come back because he's one of the authors in the State House. He has a book as well. So,
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, great guy. Great guy.
is there anything you want to add about the book before we're out of time in the last 3 minutes?
Yeah, for me, it was a pleasure writing the book and revisiting the activities that we did, the great people. And hopefully, by reading the book, you pick up some ideas about how to become a more effective leader.
Oh, there's one of the pictures that you brought.
Exactly, yeah.
It's on page 5.
It's written based on military background, but many business leaders have looked at it and find it directly related to what they do. It's also been accepted in academic circles. So although it's a military background, the lessons in there are much more widely attributable.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I would have started it already, but I'm reading Brave Men by Ernie Pyle. I've never read this book.
I look forward to reading that as well. Ernie Pyle's a great American.
Well, I'll pass it to you when I finish
thank you.
it.
I appreciate that.
So it came with a bookmark from Gig Harbor in Washington State, and I've been there. My cousins used to live in Gig Harbor.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's nice.
There you go.
So I'm on page 306, so I'm getting there.
Getting there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming out to be on the show today. And you can come back another time when we can talk about anything you want.
See, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.